This sorted out. Let's try. Oh, they both don't work? They both don't work.
Okay, everyone, please wind down conversations and find your seats. Okay, thank you, everyone. We are back with our next exciting panel on brain capital, psychedelics, and human flourishing. So happy to turn the microphone over to our esteemed moderator, Friederike de Strebeck.
Thanks a lot. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Fred de Strebeck. I'm very pleased to be here. I'm the Executive Director of the European Brain Council. And I just would like to emphasize first how lucky you are to have a panel in front of you, because we are just about to hold it in front of the Ukrainian House and in front of President Zelensky as we just entered the building 5 minutes ago. And we were stuck by the police. And you were also lucky not to lose one of the panelists who actually fell over from the stage like 30 seconds away. So just to say a word about EBC, the European Brain Council, and we are really pleased to be associated with the day today. And our thanks to all the partners for the invitation and the partnership. So we are a Brussels-based advocacy organization promoting investments in brain research, in brain health, in brain innovation, and in the brain capital and the brain economy. And you will hear more about that in a moment. But our focus is really about the societal impact of brain conditions and the need for those investments and the need for solution-driven policy making. And in that regard, we have expanded our dialogue at a global level, being present during the General Assembly of the UN in New York, being present now on a regular basis in Davos, but also at the G7 and other circles. And I'd like to draw your attention on a paper that we are launching today on social production with friends from Australia, but also from Norway, as they made a country profiling on the economic benefit of social production and of caregiving, which is a central issue when it comes to managing brain conditions and the impact of brain disorders. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the panel and esteemed colleagues sharing the stage with me. First, Professor Harris Eyre, flying over from California, who is the founder of the Brain Capital Alliance and university professor at Rice in Texas. Geoff Moore, who is the founder of Pint to Purpose, and he will tell us more about that in a moment. And Tadeusz Avrot, long-standing friend and colleague, but also the founder and exec director of PAREA, which is the Psychedelic Access and Research European Alliance, which we are happy also to support at EBC. So Harris, I'd like to invite you first on stage and to provide like an insight as to this notion on the brain capital. Where is it coming from? Why did you realize that there was a need to push this concept? And basically, what have you been doing in the context of that alliance?
Awesome. Thank you, Fred. Thanks, everyone, for being here, and to the co-organizers and Sean and Heather. So I spend all my days thinking about the brain transition, this idea that the cost of mental and neurological issues across the lifespan, from autism to depression to Alzheimer's disease, costs 2.2 trillion to the global economy, and it's rising at 5% a year. So this is an escalating issue, and we simply cannot stay in silos of the disciplines of the things that we're doing. We must enact a societal transition, something like the energy transition, where we're going from fossil fuel to clean energy, a whole societal movement. That's what the brain transition is doing. How do we bend the cost curve of this multi-trillion-dollar cost of mental and neurological issues? So that means more prevention, and it means better treatment, and it means better innovations as well. And so how can we get the government to engage across sectors, from health sector to digital to climate? You can think across the society, and then what's the role of the private sector and also of philanthropy? So to give some examples, Fred, well, first of all, to say that this brain economy or brain transition is in the formal WEF agenda tomorrow. There's a 90-minute session in the Congress Center, which is great. So we started this work about 4.5 years ago, and it's building to a crescendo. So that will be ventilated tomorrow, and with a white badge should try to get in there. And so we will be doing a dialogue series with WEF and the McKinsey Health Institute in the next 12 months to specifically address different precise issues in the brain economy in different parts of the world. So if you have any ideas for precise issues you want us to cover in particular parts of the world, let us know. And then finally, we have a great project with the European Investment Bank Institute to look at how do you invest in this brain transition in Europe. So what would be a $10 billion investment strategy to achieve this in the context of Europe. That's what we're thinking about and working with political colleagues and policy colleagues and private sector colleagues to see how would you deploy that amount of capital. And then we don't just want to stop in Europe. How do we then work with other development banks in other countries to really foster this kind of radical investment strategy?
Okay, we'll expand in the course of the discussion, but I immediately would like to ask you. It's not only about a new narrative, right? It's really about, let's say, managing all of these concepts, and as you explained, like shifting investment and making sure there is a greater penetration of those issues into the policy agenda. So now you're getting there. What was like instrumental in getting into the WEF agenda?
I think the partnership with organizations, that's the answer. The McKinsey Health Institute has been instrumental, working with the European Brain Council, working with groups like Kokoro and the Coalition for Mental Health Investing, which is Kokoro, Wellcome Trust, McKinsey, and the Clinton Global Initiative. So it really is partnerships with open-minded, like-minded groups, and we're trying to, this is like a movement. It's like, solving climate change issues, and we're trying to bring, everyone has a narrative. We're trying to bring this big economic narrative to the table and working a lot with economists and finance people to try to make it make sense to sort of heads of state and finance ministers.
Okay, thanks. Geoff, I'd like to turn to you. You have a personal story to tell us, but also an anecdote and actually a gift to the audience, but I don't want to spoil the effect, so okay. The word to you.
Thank you, Fred. I'll
hold the mic. Hold them.
Oh, sorry. Just to say, so I'm from Canada. I have 4 kids. I've been in the investment industry for 30 years. One quick point that I never told them, I had the oldest father of any of my friends. He was born in 1906. So that's my father. So he was... Anyway, I was always conscious of the value of time because I was worried about losing him even when I was a little kid. But anyway, fast forward, I did have a lived experience. I was with Deutsche Bank, Bank of Ireland for 15 years, and then I became an entrepreneur. At the end of it, I went to a psych ward for 5.5 weeks, and I had a long recovery. But people I met, my experiences led me to a lot of realizations, and one of them is to do with, people obviously need hope, and they need to know that maybe their greatest setbacks are their greatest opportunities. And I wanted to share quickly, in 2017, I went with my son to the Muhammad Ali Center in Louisville, Kentucky. And maybe some of you know this story, but there's something called the red bike moment. And so each one of you, people you work with, would be invited to write to the Muhammad Ali Center, put it online. Muhammad Ali, the only reason he became the greatest was at 12 years old, his parents gave him a red Schwinn bicycle and it was stolen. So he went to the police. He'd never heard of boxing. Nobody in his family was boxing. And the police officer who saw him was Sergeant Joe Martin, who was a top boxing coach, and said, you know what? You're going to come to my gym tomorrow. You're going to learn to defend yourself. We're going to get your bike back. And so he went there. So the red bike moment means that was a massive setback to him, or he was so upset, and yet it changed his destiny. So for people struggling with mental health conditions, the red bike moment and the Muhammad Ali being the greatest is a great reference point to say, your biggest setback, it's not over. It is not over. And we're going to show a quick clip. It's a 2-minute clip. I've created an initiative called Pin to Purpose. You'll understand it more and say a couple more things. But I had a conclusion because when I was in the psych ward, my doctor told me, look, Geoff, every single person in the world has a breaking point, and you've found one of yours. So you know what? We know you've been involved in the community. Now it's your turn for a hand up. Take it easy. We're going to help you. But take the pressure down because every single person, depending on what happens in their life, has a breaking point. So I've created this initiative called Pin to Purpose. Show a quick video and then we'll pass it back.
Thanks.
We can show the video, please.
Yep.
Imagine going to the gym. A very strong-looking man seems to be struggling to do reps with a 45-pound barbell. This is ridiculous. Why does this seemingly strong man appear so incredibly weak? He needs a spot, or he's going to get pinned. And you see, no matter how strong you are, if you do reps with even the lightest barbell until you can no longer lift it off your chest, you are pinned. Wow, he's so weak. A complete embarrassment. I can't understand this. He's actually very strong. He can get up on his own. But you are not weak. You have reached a breaking point. At that point, you will not be able to get up from there on your own. This is a metaphor for life and living with mental health conditions. People being pinned by mental health conditions often do so in isolation. It's a real struggle, but they are not weak. They do not choose their painful conditions. Unfortunately, those with depression, anxiety, PTSD, addictions, and other conditions often don't come forward for help. That's because of the fear of stigma and their own weakened state. The resulting self-talk can also weigh heavily. Our common humanity means that none of us is truly different. Everyone is vulnerable to being pinned when life plays hardball, whether it is a physical or mental health condition. No one can stand alone. For those who are not pinned, appreciate that it could be you or loved one someday. So when you see a chance to help someone, please do. They are not weak, they are pinned. Even a slight hand up and a listening ear can begin seriously lightening the load, change, or save a life. Help end stigma. Move from being pinned to purpose. Time for a hand up.
Can I say one last thing? I just want to say one last. I just want to say one last thing. So that's the explainer video. I have a Canadian Football League player, former offensive lineman, 6'4", 315, bench press champion. He's getting his friends. Talk to the kids. Talk to anybody. Take the pressure down. That's the goal. You don't have to be a superhero, no matter what you see on social media. These guys will show, they also will get pinned, and life will pin you. So if you take the pressure down, you can go after stigma very, very hard. And then hopefully that little bit of a hand up, which is the equivalent of a spot, allows somebody to say, it's human to get pinned. Talk to somebody that you trust, and maybe they can find the healing journey with so many experts in the room. But I would love to go right after stigma with a slight reframing, because every single person in the world, strongest man, woman, teenagers, have the exact same result every single time. You bench press until you cannot get it off your chest, you're pinned.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Rev. Tad, it's your turn. Actually, we just discussed depression, PTSD, anxiety, and others. You've been the founder of Eyre, so this European Alliance for Access and Research on Psychedelics. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us more about, let's say, the conditions and I would say the unmet need in the space to create such an initiative?
Sure. So just to say a couple of words about myself, my whole professional career, I was at this nexus of brain health advocacy, then working to influence and policies and priorities of the European Union in terms of health and also of WHO, and doing all this through the multi-stakeholder civil society alliances. And 3 years ago, I founded Eyre. Eyre is really focusing on on safe and on effective introduction of psychedelic therapies into European mainstream healthcare services. So we are speaking about psychedelics in the future once they go through all the clinical trials, through the regulatory approvals, being medicines. And the very reason why we are doing this is indeed the scale of unmet needs in mental health. And I guess we all know someone who is affected by by persistent mental health conditions and doesn't find help. Many people are treatment resistant. So this is really what's kind of driving our work, and this is what is what's behind psychedelic therapies. One important thing for Eyre is that we need to win trust and broad engagement from key stakeholders, from healthcare professionals, from scientists. And the way we do it is by involving certain groups in our membership structure. So we have 13 members, and among them we have European Psychiatric Association. In fact, the president of EPA is on EBC board, the past president of the European College of Neuropsychopharmacology. Our chair is Professor David Nutt from Imperial College London, and we are also very happy to have Fred sitting on the board as EBC representative and being our treasurer. And I also want to mention that we are a very small organization, but we already had quite a bit of impact, I believe, in Brussels. We catalyzed €6.5 million in EU funding in addressing unmet needs specifically for people who are in palliative care setting and have depression. We also directly, through our work, influenced the European Medicines Agency, and they organized a 2-day workshop on psychedelics. We were recently invited by WHO to be part of this revision group for the guidelines on controlled substances. But I think it's also appropriate to mention, given that we are in Davos and speak about mental health. 2 years ago, the WEF, they are issuing these annual reports on global risks, and they mentioned that wide-scale spread of mental health conditions and the severe deterioration in mental health is a global risk, posing risk to economies and societies. So yeah, we believe and we hope that psychedelics will be this one extra tool in an armamentarium of healthcare interventions that can help some people.
Yep, thanks. And personally, I mean, how do you relate to that? I mean, what was your personal drive into initiating this?
Yeah. I mean, so it started and it's kind of grounded in science, but I have to say throughout my work and kind of being exposed to different areas in healthcare, I've never seen, there is something quite distinct in psychedelics. I heard people who've been working in clinical trials their whole life saying that they've never seen clinical trials when there would be this degree of really deep gratitude in many participants. Or someone said that, I think it was in Imperial, that there was a trial participant and she came and they were interacting for many days or weeks, and someone never saw a person smile, and then during the treatment she smiled and she said it's nice to smile. But I especially remember when Parea organized events, we always invite people to provide testimonials, people who were a part of the trials, and there was a MDMA assisted therapy for alcohol use disorder, and we had a person who when he was 12, he witnessed his mother being raped and murdered in his house, and obviously he developed severe PTSD. He had severe panic attacks and then alcohol use disorder. And during the treatment, he says that, so he was in his room and the perpetrator came, and then he said to him, "I know what you've done, and I'm not afraid of you." And then his mother also came, and they started chatting with this guy and saying, "Why did you do this? You will go to prison." But then the next thing they did, they hugged him and they wished him well. And there was much more happening during this trial, but obviously this was a very cathartic experience for him. And he said earlier that he tried dozens and dozens of treatments, and this was the first one that really worked. Of course, it didn't fix him completely, but it really made him better. So I understand that there is also a lot of kind of resistance towards psychedelics because they might, create fear in people, but because you are surrounding your control. But for me, if there is a warmer, if there is a more patient, there is a happier dad or mom coming back home, benefiting from these therapies, I think this is a huge win, and this is something that is driving me personally.
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, the transformational aspect of that, I think, resonates strongly with what you've been doing, Jeff, with the concept of reframing. Yep. Can you maybe say a word about that? What is it exactly? Use the mic.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Reframing. If I can add one little part to this too. The entire global pension industry is based on a concept of fiduciary duty, and I think they should be also having a mass debate with this community on reframing, because there are meta studies that show there's 4 pillars and not one. Financial security is one, but health is number one as you get older and older. Family, friends, community is right there all the time, and purpose is right there all the time. The vast majority of people in these meta studies want to have purpose, and as you get older, you better have it. So the reframing, like I said, is there's a very heavy weight to come out from under when you, and the stigma is felt, so people don't want to deal with it. But by kind of stigmatizing stigmatizers, showing the common humanity, let's forget about people are weak. They're in a weakened state. So to reframe by some common, like, you're just struggling, everybody's struggling, but you may be really struggling. So, other people should help you or get out of the way. And the reframing for people, it certainly helped me. When my doctor said, everybody in the world, I felt like, oh my God, because I felt like horrendous.
Yeah, thanks. Harris, I'd like to bring you in on the impact of mental health and how it contributes to your new concept of the brain healthy transition.
Yeah. I think that mental health issues are like, in the scheme of this growing issue that I mentioned, multi-trillion-dollar mental and neurological issue, it's about half of it. So it's a really big issue, and it's of course really being talked about a lot more now, right, Fred? Like with COVID, everyone started talking about it. I had mental health struggles during COVID that I never had before. And so that has been helpful. We see in the US, where I'm based now, a lot of investment in youth mental health in particular. There's been billions and billions put into youth mental health, which is terrific. So mental health is very important. I come from the mental health field. I'm a physician and neuroscientist by training, but really came up through the psychiatry area. But just to the point of...
Nobody's perfect, huh? So it's okay.
Yeah. Just to the point of reframing, one of the things that I think is helping us, and I include all of you in this family of sort of brain and mind stakeholders, I think one of the things that's really helping now is not just stigma reduction, but viewing the brain as an asset. Our brains are the seat of everything: productivity, creativity, being social, having a purpose. It's all related to our brains. And so this idea of brain capital, we all have brain capital. Mine right now is not so good. I'm jet lagged and, haven't slept enough. But, you can also take that brain capital construct to heads of state, right? You can take it to finance ministers and start to talk about the brain capital of a nation state. And where the big link is now, we're in Europe. Europe has challenges with economic productivity. We're at the World Economic Forum, so forgive me to talk about economics. We have productivity issues in Europe. America has weak productivity, not quite as low as Europe, but it's weak. So viewing this brain transition as a way of building the economic productivity of nation states, that's really getting a lot of attention. And so we need to collectively figure out, what do we want to prioritize? Is it startups? Is it, policy change? Is it research? And so we need to come to sort of some unified understanding of where are we going to put the money, because we're breaking through with the message.
So it's equally transformational. So I'm being told it's now the time for Q&A. So I don't know if there are any questions to our panelists in the room. There will be a mic flying over, so please raise a hand. No, was that? I can't believe it was that clear, guys. All right, okay, great. You have one? Yeah. Yeah. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Dr. Axel Pollack, medical doctor and venture capitalist. The GLP-1 agonists seem to play a role also in the brain health and in addiction and many other things that are now discovered. Could you give your opinion on this, perhaps as a new armamentarium?
So you pronounced it GLP-1. You mean GLP-1, right? Okay, good, because it's American versus the European description. So, I think it's very interesting, right? It's a fascinating area. GLP-1,
Harris, can I interrupt? You two can talk in a corner afterwards.
Okay.
But for us human beings,
okay,
what is it like GLP-1?
So GLP-1 are these, yes, Ozempic, Wegovy. There are many trade names for them. It's these drugs that are sweeping across the United States in particular, but increasingly around the world. Very profound weight loss drugs. They're profound with weight loss and reducing risks of cardiac issues and diabetes. they do have side effects of nausea and muscle loss. So there is a need to continue to evolve these medicines to reduce the side effects, right? But everyone's probably heard about GLP-1. It turns out that they are showing some signals around Alzheimer's disease, around addiction. It's very promising, but it's very early. But it's good that you bring it up. I think it's fascinating, and we sort of watch this space. It feels like maybe it's a little bit like the psychedelics field a couple years ago, where there was early signals of some effect, and now that's much more mature. And GLP-1, we're on a journey. So it's exciting. But, the cost is an issue, right? The cost, they're very expensive, many thousands of dollars, sometimes every month. And so as we talk about, economies, nation states, the health insurance systems are being potentially crushed by GLP-1 costs. So we have to solve that to make it equitable and scalable. Otherwise, it's essentially rich people with good insurance plans that can access them, which is not sufficient.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, here first. What? Yeah, okay. Go ahead. And then second here. Yeah.
So my name is Dr. Royce. I have a number.
Can you hold the mic closer? We don't hear. Yeah.
My name is Dr. Royce. I have a number of hats. So I'm also a Rotarian, so we're anxious about how you create better societies. In terms of mental health, we feel that self-worth is a critical vector. There's a study going on in terms of cancer, long-term cancer cure, that's looking at reversal of cancers, but mental health isn't included in the spectrum. We find that state of mind is incredibly important. It's an impact of up to 40%, but it's not on the agenda. How do we create a mechanism whereby state of mind can be included as a natural mechanism? If you look at prevention, for every dollar you spend in prevention, you get $36 back in benefit. The insurance companies cannot afford to continue to pay for curative cure. It just doesn't work. So how do we find a new way of creating this debate further down starting at schools even, and then going right the way through society?
Yeah, thanks for that. Ted, I feel it's a question for you.
So for me, the way I want to see mental health is that it unlocks value for healthcare in general, and we have many examples. Cancer is one, and I think with ovarian cancer, when you have depression and anxiety, there is probably, if I remember correctly, 50% increased chances for getting this. I know that when it comes to heart health, again, if you improve mental health of people who are affected by heart problems, then it really does save lives. We know that when someone has PTSD, it will dramatically increase your chances of developing dementia. So for me, again, I want to see mental health as a force multiplier for our physical health.
I have a quick comment, and the first one is, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. A pound is 16 ounces. So if it goes to 36, you've got a massive multiple. I think, Sean's efforts, the impact investment community's efforts, there are possibilities to create structures for blended finance, for social impact bonds. There are some examples, so I think there's possibilities there. I should just say quickly, the initiative I've started, PIN 2 purpose. 2 is just a matter of, reaching out once you feel like the load of stigma has been lowered, and purpose is inviting people into a community and inviting them to find that purpose. And like Muhammad Ali, the greatest, was saying, to have that optimism that you can move on and engage in a broader cause greater than yourself.
Yeah, thanks. Harris, you have a comment? No? Okay. Okay, we have time for one more question, as I'm being told, so yeah.
Hi, I'm Amber Mahood. I wear a lot of hats, but at the center of all of that, I'm a very human-centric mother, worried about the future for all the generations to come, and my daughter specifically. And I think a lot of people in this room come from the impact space originally, and now we're talking about brain. And so it's a comment and a reframe as much as a question, but when we're talking about mobilizing great amounts of money, and Harris, you were kept likening it to the climate, transition or energy transition. Can we really have impact or an energy transition if we're not first focused on the brain and mental health transition that needs to happen for us to change the way that we consume and produce and behave on this planet in the first place? And how do we interlay these and interconnect these topics together to create true systemic change?
Well, I have a 15-month-old baby girl, and so I also care about the future like you. And we should talk at more length about, because you just opened up a whole series of cans of worms. But certainly, you know, the climate issues are inextricably linked with mental health issues, right? So, you know, bad climate, you know, fires like in LA or hurricanes, disasters cause trauma and distress. And then, you know, our brains, if we're climate denial, kind of susceptible to climate disinformation and misinformation, we can be making decisions that are worsening the climate crisis. So these things are inextricably linked. And, you know, we have to learn from what was done in climate around impact investing, but also advocacy. What can we learn from that field that did so well in many ways? And what should we avoid? Because there's a backlash, right? A significant backlash. So how do we avoid that? And that, you know, that's an interesting question that we should all think about, because I don't know, no one has the answer, but we need to sort of come up with the right narrative. And certainly, you know, this, anyway, so it's a very good point. I appreciate it.
All right, it's probably the time now for the conclusion. And I'd like to invite every one of you for kind of 20 to 30 seconds maximum, like takeaway from this conversation. Who'd like to start? Jeff? Do you feel ready?
Yeah.
Always ready. Okay.
I'll keep this to 20 seconds. My dad's cousin, Alf, 105 years old. He had a way to reframe his own happiness. Every morning, woke up, went to the mirror in the old folks' home. Oh, good, you're still here. And he would also say, happy birthday, Alf. And he would tell me, you can bet people, because I'm going to celebrate more birthdays in the future than any of your friends, because he celebrates them every day. Reframing at whatever stage of our life, whatever setback, whatever, you know, and then if you're 105, hopefully you're looking back and you weren't involved in wars, you were involved in celebrating life and humanity with great people like this.
Thank you. Dad?
Yeah, I love it. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, I just want to say that one thing that I particularly, especially appreciate about psychedelic assisted care is that they put kind of front and center the role of human experience in psychological transformation, because they are experiential treatments. So we know that mental health is much more than just, you know, our biology, and I think it's important that we put humans back at the center of their healing process.
Thanks. Harris?
I would say, you know, join us in this big sort of economic movement and societal transformation. You know, so follow us. That's the Brain Capital Alliance or the Brain Economy Hub. Things are taking off with this WEF annual meeting session tomorrow. We're very, very connected to Sean and Real, so very much aligned and synergistic. But just let us know, you know, how you want to get involved, and let's do it all together.
Well, thanks a lot to all three of you. I mean, not only were your talks like transformational or emphasizing that, but it was, I mean, at least to me, very inspirational. So please join me in thanking them by a round of applause. And I'm very pleased to relinquish my moderation. Thank you very much for your attention, and on to the next session. Okay.